Chapter 1 of the Vicar of Wrexhill. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Vicar of Wrexhill by Francis Milton Trollope. Chapter 1. The Village of Wrexhill, the Mowbray Family, a Birthday. The beauties of an English village have been so often dwelt upon, so often described, that I dare not linger long upon the sketch of Wrexhill, which must of necessity precede my introduction of its vicar. And yet not even England can show many points of greater beauty than this oak-sheltered spot can display. Its peculiar style of scenery, half garden, half forest in aspect, is familiar to all who are acquainted with the New Forest, although it has features entirely its own. One of these is an overshot mill, the sparkling fall of which is accurately and most nobly overarched by a pair of oaks which have long been the glory of the parish. Another is the grey and mellow beauty of its antique church, itself unencumbered by ivy, while the wall and old stone gateway of the churchyard look like a line and knot of sober green, enclosing it with such a rich and unbroken luxuriance of foliage never sere, as seems to show that it is held sacred, and that no hand profane ever ventured to rob its venerable mass of a leaf or a berry. Close beside the church, and elevated by a very gentle ascent, stands the pretty vicarage, as if placed expressly to keep watch and ward over the safety and repose of its sacred neighbour. The only breach in the ivy-bound fence of the churchyard is the little wicket-gate that opens from the vicarage garden, but even this is arched over by the same immortal and unfading green, a fitting emblem of that eternity, the hope of which emanates from the shrine it encircles. At this particular spot, indeed, the growth of the plant is so vigorous that it is controlled with difficulty, and has not obeyed the hand which led it over the rustic arch without dropping a straggling wreath or two, which, if a vicar of the 19th century could wear a wig, might leave him in the state coveted for Absalom by his father. The late Vicar of Wrexhill, however, I speak of him who died a few weeks before my story begins, would never permit these graceful pendants to be shorn, declaring that the attitude they enforced on entering the churchyard was exactly such as befitted a Christian when passing the threshold of the court of God. Behind the vicarage, and stretching down the side of the little hill on which it stood, so as to form a beautiful background to the church, rose a grove of lofty forest trees that seemed to belong to its garden, but which in fact was separated from it by the road which led to Mowbray Park, on the outskirts of which noble domain they were situated. This same road, having passed behind the church and vicarage, led to the village street of Wrexhill, and thence, towards various other parishes, over a common, studded with oaks and holly bushes, on one side of which, with shelving grassy banks that gave to the scene the appearance of noble pleasure grounds, was a sheet of water large enough to be dignified by the appellation of Wrexhill Lake. Into this the little stream that turned the mill emptied itself, after meandering very prettily through Mowbray Park, where, by the help of a little artifice, it became wide enough at one spot to deserve a boat and boat-house, and at another to give occasion for the erection of one of the most graceful park bridges in the county of Hampshire. On one side of the common stands what might be called an ale-house, did not the exquisite neatness of every feature belonging to the little establishment render this vulgar appellation inappropriate. It was in truth just such a place as a town-worn and fastidious invalid might have fixed his eyes upon, and said, "How I should like to lodge in that house for a week or two." Roses and honeysuckles battled together for space to display themselves over the porch and above the windows. The little enclosure on each side the post whence swung the Mowbray arms presented to the little bay window of the mansion such a collection of odorous plants, without a single weed to rob them of their strength, that no lady in the land, let her flower garden be what it may, but would allow that Sally Freeman, the daughter, barmaid, waiter, gardener at the Mowbray Arms, understood how to manage common flowers as well as any Scotchman in her own scientific establishment. Industry, neatness, and their fitting accompaniment and reward, comfort, were legible throughout the small domain. John Freeman brewed his own beer, double and single. Dorothy, his loving wife, baked her own bread, cured her own bacon, churned her own butter, and poached her own eggs, or roasted her own chicken, when they were called for by any wandering lover of woodland scenery who was lucky enough to turn his steps towards Wrexhill. The other labours of the household were performed by Sally, except indeed the watering of horses and the like, for which services a stout, decent peasant boy received a shilling a week, and 3 good meals a day. And happy was the cottager whose son got the appointment, for both in morals and manners the horse-boy at the Mowbray Arms might have set an example to his betters.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?